And now, it's BoomerLife, lifestyle discussion designed to make your life more engaging, meaningful, and complete. Celebrating the baby boomer generation, this is BoomerLife on CIL 650.
Listen to the band.
Welcome to BoomerLife on CIL 650. I'm George Gordon. On BoomerLife today, we're talking about the latest innovations in hearing. We'll be speaking about the inner ear workings from an expert perspective, and we'll be offering real solutions for those suffering from hearing loss. Joining us in studio is NexGen Hearing, a registered audiologist, Dr. Ted Venema. Dr. Ted, before we get to what hearing loss is all about, let's hear more about your background.
Well, I'm just a guy who lives in a van down by the river. It's kind of wet out there today, so I'm a little bit not as wet as you are, I hear. At any rate, no, my background is in audiology. I studied at Western Washington University in Bellingham, and then went on to study for a PhD in University of Oklahoma. Down, if you've heard of a Bible Belt, well,
yes, indeed.
There's the buckle. Oh. So anyway, I'm an audiologist, and I like teaching it and explaining it more than doing it appears. But I have been connected with NexGen for the past 3 years.
Okay, so it is a passion. Not many people like teaching; they'd rather be doing. So that's and that is a skill set. And I think that in this day and age, as with the boomer generation getting older and discovering their hearing loss problems, that profession will be busier than ever. Yeah,
it's the whole baby boom business. People born between 46 and 64. 1946 and 64. That supposedly defines the baby boom bubble, and here we are. I mean, I'm 61. My time is coming. Hearing loss tends to hit you when you're about 65. That's the general, and they call it presbycusis. Kind of sounds like Presbyterian.
Yeah.
That means Church of the Elders.
Well, it is quiet.
This is hearing of the elders, presby. And vision loss, the inability to see stuff close up.
Correct.
That's called presbyopia. That hits you when you're around 40. So hearing loss tends to hit you around 65, and it manifests itself as an inability to hear treble. I call it the trouble with treble. Mm-hmm. And when you can't hear treble, you're going to have trouble hearing what someone said. Not that someone said something, but what they said. Dishes or fishes, kittens or mittens. The differences between the words, and I always said this on the last show too, hat, fat, sat, bat. They all have but it's those high-pitched lips consonant sounds of speech.
They disappear.
And they just disappear. And so the person is thinking, boy, these young kids, they mumble. And, well, you know what? To be honest, I think they do. But the coin has two sides. And the other side of the coin is they just can't hear the crisp clarity of ongoing speech. And so they miss what someone said.
Mm-hmm. Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we're a lot better now. Your profession is a lot better at diagnosing, understanding hearing loss, the different parameters. We'll get into all this stuff, but it's a different science than it was even 30 years ago.
And
right?
very different from vision, because everybody knows about their glasses. Everybody, Elton John wears glasses as big as God. I mean, right in they're a show-off thing, and people know of the phrases far-sighted, nearsighted, contact lenses. But hearing loss is invisible, and we believe what we see, and we can't see hearing loss, so it gets swept under the rug. It's the unsung sense. And when someone can't hear, people will start thinking, oh, he's daft or he's stupid. The old phrase, deaf and dumb. Mm-hmm. And that whole, he's missing it. Oh, dad's going senile, or the kid's just not listening. And it's like, well, no, have you had the kid's hearing checked? I mean, check it out, because maybe the TV is being cranked up so loud because the person simply isn't hearing it. And hearing aids, I'm glad you brought it up. The hearing aids are very different today than they were 10 years ago, and very different from the way they were 20 years ago. We've made huge advances. They're digital.
Right.
They're all programmable. They're digital.
Digitalization has changed everything.
Totally. It's, the big beige bananas that people wore behind their head.
Right.
The things are whistling away.
Yes,
and it's kind of like that's the image that many people have of hearing aids. Well, I could have walked into the studio here wearing a pair of hearing aids. You would never have noticed. You wouldn't have noticed cosmetically at all. It's just, and they're exquisitely programmable. They're programmed
to an nth.
And via Bluetooth or hardwire. But by golly, they are all digital. So go ahead.
There are lots of companies that we hear about. Obviously, whenever there's a need, there's one, then there's two, and then there's 20, right?
Yeah.
So tell us how NexGen is set apart from the rest.
NexGen is just, as they say in Alabama, mo better. No, we take the real extra mile with a client. We really take the time to explain things. NexGen also has a 21-day completely free trial. Now, I'm not a salesman. I don't own a shop or anything, so I'm not selling used cars. But where could you walk into a place and walk out with a few $1,000s worth of merchandise on your head without having plunked down the smallest in Canadian currency today, a nickel? Okay? You can walk out trying the hearing aids, a pair of hearing aids, for 3 weeks. And we don't just send you on your way. We want you to come back in a week. How are you doing? Do we need to tweak things? Can I answer any questions? Come on in now in 2 weeks. How are you doing? Can I check any other questions, any concerns? Come on in 3 weeks. Only then do you decide whether you wanted to keep the hearing aids. But then even though you've plunked your money down, you've got another 69 days to wear them with the knowledge that at the end of 21 and 69 is 90. Right. At the end of 90 days, you can return them for a full refund. So there's not a lot of places that do that.
Right.
And I guess NexGen wants you to be happy with your hearing aids.
It's not just about selling a hearing aid.
Nope.
It's about servicing. It's about helping somebody.
You got it. You walk the walk with the client, because hearing aid fitting is very different from eyeglass fitting. Eyeglass fitting is either correct or incorrect. Like if I wore your glasses, I'd get a headache. If you wore mine, you'd get a headache. I mean, it's either, when you're getting vision tested, it's ka-chung in front of your eye. How does that look? Oh, it's a bit blurry. Ka-chung, how does that? Oh, that's better. Ka-chung, how does that look? Oh, it's getting blurry again. Okay, back to the other one. And now let's do the other eye. The other eye. But it's hearing aid fitting is different. Okay, because with vision loss, the back of your eyeball, the retina, that's usually intact. And the back of your eyeball changes light into electricity. Okay, and electricity is the language your brain understands. But the problem with most vision loss is light isn't properly getting to that retina. So you go to the dollar store and you buy glasses to focus light properly on the retina. Hearing loss is different. Hearing loss is like someone scratched your retinas themselves. So it's a different kettle of fish.
Just like to remind you, you're listening to BoomerLife on CL 650. George Gordon in studio with Dr. Ted Venema, audiologist with NexGen Hearing. And Dr. Ted, we're hearing more about hearing aid prescriptions and the process about it. Yeah. And we've been talking about the difference in the ear. My deafness is not going to be the same as
Correct.
Your deafness as we slowly get there. My wife says more quickly, apparently, than other people in our family. You talked about sculpting the shape of sound. Yeah. How do you do that?
Well, I'm glad you've asked that, George. It's hearing aids don't just make sounds louder. Okay, that is like one of the public's misconceptions, because as you correctly said, your hearing loss will be different from mine. So just like glasses, hearing aids need a prescription. Because if I wore someone else's hearing aids, they're going to sound terrible on mine. People get different hearing loss for bass versus treble. And so your hearing in the bass and your hearing in treble, you might have a hearing loss, but it'll look different from it'll be in different amounts than mine will be. What hearing aids do is try to make a mirror image of your hearing sensitivity for bass versus treble. So if you've got a good hearing in the low pitches and then bad hearing in the treble, the hearing aid is going to give you virtually no amplification in the low pitches because your hearing is good, and it's going to deliberately amplify treble. And so when you think of what that would be like in speech, I'm going to roll my paper here like a horn. And you've got this horn now. If I talk into the wide end of the horn, my speech is going to sound muffled. My speech is going to sound muffled. If I talk into the narrow end of the horn, now you're hearing the high pitches of my speech. Okay? That's treble. I'm just amplifying treble. And that's what you want to do with hearing aids, but it's going to differ on an individual basis.
Now, we have seen products advertised, usually around Christmas, the great, right now, you've been deaf all this time, just get this little device and you can put it around your neck and you can just turn it up and no more problems hearing.
Personal amplification devices. Right. They ain't hearing aids. And you know what a lot of them do? A lot of them amplify just what you didn't want.
Right.
A lot of them amplify the bass pitches only. It's cheap to amplify bass. It's more complicated to amplify treble. And a lot of these cheap devices for $25, $50 that you see advertised, you get what you pay for. They're going to make sounds louder, but it's going to be muffled.
Yeah.
And hearing aids themselves are totally different.
And if you amplify it, there is that point, and we'll get to this later, but loud is loud, even if you're hard of hearing.
Correct.
Got it.
Yeah.
All right. Another point, we're going to, before we go to a bit of a break, we talk about the audiogram.
Yeah.
If these and thresholds. Let's talk a bit about that.
Okay, when you go in for a hearing test, you're going to wear headphones. And they're going to test your right ear separately from your left ear, just like they do with eyes. And they're going to give you tones. The examiner is going to present tones to you, let's say in the right ear, and we're measuring the decibel level required for you to just barely hear that tone. What's your hearing sensitivity in decibels at each pitch? So they'll test you in low pitches, mid pitches, high pitches, and they'll get an idea of your hearing sensitivity in the right ear for all those different pitches, and then they'll do the same in the left ear. And the right ear will be marked as O's, the left ear will be marked as X's. We play tic-tac-toe here. And so you're going to get what's called an audiogram. And the softest levels that you can just barely hear, those are called your hearing thresholds. Think of the doorway, you're walking across the threshold. Did you hear it or did you not? Okay? That's why they call it a threshold. And your hearing thresholds will be marked down on the audiogram, and the prescription will be made from that. Wow.
It's the advancements, the understanding and digitalization and that floor of hearing is amazing once you understand. And how one ear can be different than the other.
Oh, yeah.
I would never have thought about it. You tend to think of, one ear's going a little deaf in this one, but it could be something depending on where you're getting your noise or your impacts.
Now, that's a good question, thing you're bringing up, George. There's people who get ear infections, okay, and that may happen in one ear or the other ear, and usually those are medically treatable. And then you get people who are exposed to noise, and maybe the trucker, he's got his left window open, so you get more hearing loss in his left ear. Elderly hearing loss, which is the most common cause of hearing loss, called presbycusis, as we mentioned at the beginning. That's usually what they call in the lingo bilaterally symmetrical, meaning the same in both ears. Because one ear isn't going to get old before the other ear. Generally, in one person, if the hearing loss is due to age, the hearing loss is quite similar in both ears. Usually. Not always, but usually.
So in compensating for today's hearing, the problem, today's hearing aids are using compression?
Yeah, and we'll talk about that later too. The thing is, so you think about your hearing thresholds as being poor when you've got a hearing loss. Think about a room with a floor and a ceiling. Think of your hearing levels or hearing thresholds like the floor. If I can hear 0 decibels, think of that as your feet on the floor. And if 100 decibels is the ceiling, then I've got the distance from the floor to the ceiling, don't I? But if you've got hearing loss, and it's like you're now standing on this table, and yet the ceiling hasn't gone up at all. So now you're crouched. So your feet are now halfway up in the room, but yet your headspace hasn't changed at all. So what happens with hearing loss is your floor of hearing sensitivity goes up, and meaning your hearing thresholds get worse. It takes you more decibels to just barely hear a sound. Yet, A loud sound, like 100 decibels, is going to sound just as loud to you as it will to someone who's got perfectly normal hearing.
All right. We got lots more to talk about, the fitting process, and all places are not the same when it comes to that. You're listening to Boomer Life on CL 650. I'm George Gordon, talking today with NexGen hearing specialist. I like it. Not just an audiologist, a specialist, Dr. Ted Venema. You can get more information, by the way, at nextgenhearing.com.
Celebrating the baby boomer lifestyle. This is Boomer Life on CL 650.